Hi, I'm Nashara. I'm going to present to you about the backstory of Lamb to the Slaughter. The backstory of Lamb to the Slaughter, based on Roald Dahl, the story got published in 1953. Centers on Mary Maloney, a devoted housewife who murders her husband, Patrick, the detective, by striking him with a frozen leg of lamb after he announced he is leaving her with their unborn child. To cover up the crime, she cleverly cooks the lamb and serves it to the investigative policemen who unknowingly eat the murder weapon. Right now, I'm going to present about the Freitag triangle. So the first thing, the Freitag triangle is exposition. What is exposition? Exposition is an introduction of the story. It also introduces characters, setting, and initial situation. It also introduces potential conflicts. The exposition in the short story is Mary, as a devoted housewife, is waiting for her husband to come back home from work. After her husband is back from work, she greets him and offers him to make a supper, but he refuses. And the next one, rising action. This is the part of the story where the conflicts begin to build and the character faces challenges. After her husband refuses the supper, he then dropped a bombshell on her, saying that he will divorce her. Mary felt shocked. She then walked to the kitchen and found the first thing she saw, which is the leg of the lamb.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, I will explain to you another Freitag triangle, which is the climax, falling action, and resolution. So, before we start, let me introduce myself first. My name is Nurnisa Kratul Ain binti Nur Fadlisham, and my ID number is BGJ240710189. Okay, so let me explain to you first the climax of this story. The climax, what is climax? Climax is when the conflict reach the highest point in that story and the characters need to face their challenge. Okay, in this story, the climax is when the Mary Melanie kills her husband from behind of his back or behind of his head using a frozen leg lamb. Okay, it's a most specific is a frozen leg lamb. Why did she do that? She do that because she find out that her husband want another wife, and she don't want that happen in her life. Now, the next part of the Freitag triangle, besides of the climax, is the falling action. What is the falling action? Falling action is when the conflict starts to resolve and the characters find a solution for their problems. The falling action in this story when the Mary Melanie starts to cook the leg lamb in the oven and goes to the grocer to make her story more believable. When she returns home, she's just pretending like she didn't know who killed her husband while the murder is herself. Okay, for example, like she coming home and then, oh my god, my husband is died and laying on the floor, let me report to the police, like that, so that when the police come, she can manipulate them by this story. She can tell them that she go to the grocer and don't know who killed her husband. Last but not least is the resolution. Resolutions means when the conflict is completely resolved and the characters have found the solutions to their problems. In this story, the resolution part is when the police eat their own evidence, which is the leg that Mary Maloney cooked in the oven, while discussing where's the weapon, where's we can find the evidence, while the Mary Melanie just sit in her living room quietly giggles by herself because the police discuss like where's the weapon. Do you think that she hide it behind of her house or in her bedroom or anywhere, or the mother hide it when we cannot see, while Mary Melanie is a good manipulator person. She cooked the leg lamb and gave it to the police to eat it. So that's the end of the Freitag triangle by me. Next part is the settings. Okay, this first settings is the Mary home. It shows that in this settings, where's the warm living room, the kitchen, and where's the murder happened. Okay, in that house, Mary can control everything. Of course, mostly we heard that in news or you have watched a documentary, the murder scene happened at home. Maybe because we suspect it, the murder maybe the murder want to rob that family, but we didn't expect this murder is in their own family members. While this story, Mary or the character is the wife is the murderer. Because why? As we can see or as we can understand of this story, while we read, Mary is good in manipulate person. She literally manipulate the police officer and the members too, and she keep that innocent face to make the story more believable, and she want the police believe that she didn't kill her own husband because she loved her husband so much. Second is the grocery store, where Mary go to grocery store to buy a piece, a cheesecake, and some more. Okay, while she act like nothing happened at her house or nothing happened before this. This shows that she really want to show herself look so innocent, and this shopping trip contrasts with the crime that she committed. The third is this setting shows a 1950 environment, giving the story domestic backdrop, which is the author makes this settings like a normal everyday home life that makes the twist more surprisingly, which is for the example this story looks like a calm story but with a little bit conflict, but then the conflict begin to reach the highest point, which is the Mary kill her husband. Maybe we didn't expect this conflict or this plot twist, because why? Because the Mary itself looks like a really soft wife that really follow what her husband needed all the time. Maybe we see Mary like that, but then the author decide to put another characteristic to Mary, which is she killed her own husband. Okay, so next, let's hear from my other partners.
My name is Nurmaisada binti Harun with number ID BGJ24071024D2. And right now, I'm going to tell you about the two main characters in this story. For the first character, we have a loving woman named Mary Manoli. Who is Mary Manoli actually? Well, Mary Manoli is actually a 6 months pregnant wife to Patrick Manoli. And one of her characteristics is to have a loving wife personality. That on page 1, line 11, it tells that Mary loved when Patrick sit loosely in a chair, that she loved the intent when Patrick's eyes only land on her. That clearly shows that Mary had a deep admiration to her husband and would do anything to protect her marriage. Now, for the second characteristics, that Mary Manoli can actually become a smart person. That on page 4, line 11, when Mary swung the lamp leg to her husband's head, she immediately began to think very fast and thought about how to cover up her own crime. For the second character, we have a Sergeant Jack Noonan. Sergeant Noonan is actually a sergeant in this story that leads the case of Patrick Manoli's murder, with a very respectful personality that on the page 7, line 16, it clearly tells that Sergeant Noonan trying to speak gently with Mary Manoli because of her surroundings, that what just happened to her husband. For the second characteristic, that Sergeant Noonan can actually become a naive person, that on page 8, line 25, he said that wouldn't dream of it. Well, this tells that Mary Manoli tried to give the murder weapon, which is the lamb leg, to the sergeant and the other two detectives, just to get rid of the evidence itself.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, my name is Nordana Husna binti Muhammad Zuki. My number ID is BGJ2407101231. Okay, so after we have discovered about the background story, the settings, and also the free text triangle, if I'm not mistaken. So for my part in this presentation, I will talk about the conflicts in the story Lamb to the Slaughter. Okay, so for conflict, we have two in total, which is internal conflict and external conflict. So first, let's talk about internet conflict in the story. So internet conflict is basically the struggle that happens in the character's mind. So for example, maybe it's the torn between the choices they need to make or their emotions or maybe about their beliefs. Okay, so in this story, as we can see in the slides, the internal conflict that happens is about betrayal between Mary and also her husband, which is Patrick. Why is it betrayal? Is because when Patrick once announced that he is going to leave her soon, it's causing a deep internal conflict inside Mary, which is she felt betrayal and she felt like abandonment after she heard that Patrick is already have someone else behind her. For example, that we can take from the story after he announced that he will leave her soon. She just watching him with a kind of dazed horror as he went further away from her with each word. Like it is totally a breakdown for her to take time to think what actually happened. So for me, it's a truly heartbreaking when someone that you love the most telling you that he will be leaving you soon. So now we are going to move for the next slide, which is external conflict. On the other hand, external conflict is about the struggle between the other characters or the outside forces. That could be another person or a society, nature, or even a fate. So, it's basically maybe like you are fighting an enemy or dealing with unfair rules or surviving a storm. So those are external conflicts. So what is external conflicts in this story? So I got a character versus society. Okay, actually what is character versus society? Okay, as you guys can see in the slide, character versus society is mostly about when the character needs to fight with another characters, which is you need to face with the police, with the detective, for example. Okay, so for this story, the character versus society, which is Mary, need to deal with the police, with the detectives when she need to hide that she already killed her husband, which is Patrick. Okay, after Mary killed her husband with the leg, basically with the frozen leg of lamb, she is tricking them to eat the supper, like the leg of lamb that she already cooked in the oven as a supper for the police to trick them to not investigate the weapon and what weapon that the murderer used to kill Patrick. As you guys can see from the dialogue itself, it says Like Mary says, like, please eat it. Personally, I couldn't touch a thing. So basically, she is forcing them to eat the leg of lamb to make the proof, to make she is not the killer. Okay, so here, it's basically, she is dealing with the police to not get caught that like she is actually the killer of Patrick. It actually herself, but she is using the leg of lamb, that the frozen leg of lamb that she already cooked, and serve it for the police to eat it and make it disappear. So there is the internal conflict and external conflict that I've already talked about. So basically, internal conflict is about the character is struggling with the character's mind, what have been inside their head, when external conflict is about the outside of the character. Okay, so I will pass for Hanan to the next slide, which is POV and themes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abdul Hanan bin Abdul Halim, and next I am going to present about point of view. The Lamb of the Slaughter story is told in third-person limited omniscient view, which means that the narrator only shares Mary's thought and emotion, and doesn't provide Patrick's or the detective's emotion. By focusing on Mary's perspective, readers experience her shock, fear, and clever thinking in real time. For example, after Patrick's announcement, the narrator tells us she went into the living room and sat quietly in her chair, watching him a kind of dazed horror. This limited perspective builds suspense because readers only know what Mary knows. We see how she processes betrayal and plans her cover-up, but we are left in the dark about whether the detectives will catch her. This keeps us engaged until the very end. Now, let us explore some key themes in the story. So, there are two major themes in Lamb to the Slaughter. Okay, so the first is appearance versus reality. So, on the surface, Mary looks like the perfect, devoted wife, but in reality, she is capable of murder and deception. So, as an example, at the beginning, we can see that Roald Dahl describes Mary like this. She loved him for the way he sat loosely in the chair. She loved for the far look in his eye when they rested on her. This shows how she appears loving, gentle, and devoted. However, in reality, when Patrick tells her he wants a divorce, her reality changes. Suddenly, she lifted a leg of lamb high and brought it down on the back of his head. The second theme is irony of justice. The police, who are supposed to solve crimes, actually destroy the evidence themselves by eating the lamb, which is the murder weapon. This creates a darkly humorous ending showing the failure of justice. The theme of irony of justice is further explored in The Lamb of the Slaughter by showing the detectives searching for evidence, which highlights the justice. One of the detectives even said that, personally, I think it's right here on the premises, probably right under our nose. However, Mary manages to convince them to eat the leg of the lamb, which is the murder weapon, thus making justice fail. Both of these themes highlight Roald Dahl's clever use of irony and make the story both entertaining and thought-provoking.
Now, in this part, we have three literary devices. So, me, Nisa, will explain to you the first literary devices, which is the irony, the situational irony. This is the most prominent device because the murder weapon, a leg of the lamb, becomes an ironic dinner for the police who are investigating this case. The thing used to kill him become a tool for a salvation. So the next literary devices we will hear from another person in my group. Let's hear it.
symbolism. So we have two symbols that we can see in this short story. For the first one, the lamb. The lamb symbolizes innocence, which we can relate to Mary, our main character. No one suspects her as a murderer because she is seen as a wife that loves her husband. So onto the second one, which is the leg of the lamb, symbolize that a foot also can be a murder weapon. We can see that when Mary take the frozen lamb leg and use that to kill her husband.
Last but not least, we have the imagery. Imagery is the use of vivid and descriptive language. Lamb to the Slaughter mostly highlights about the visual and the tactiles. Visual mostly refers about the size. That on page 1 line 1 it tells that the room was warm and clean, the curtains drawn, and the two tables aligned. It clearly shows that readers can imagine the peaceful home, which can make the murder more disturbing and more unexpected. The second type is the tactile. Tactile mostly refers about the touch. That on page 4, line 1 and 2, it tells that Mary held both two hands with the lamb leg and swung it high. That readers can actually imagine the force and the weight of the frozen lamb itself before she unfortunately killed her whole husband, Patrick Manoli. And thank you so much for watching the presentation. And assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Goodbye.